How to read micro-betrayals before they explode. Your relationship. You're about to unlock something almost no one talks about because it's too small to brag about and too honest to ignore. Relationships don't implode out of nowhere. They corrode one atom at a time. You don't lose trust in a thunderclap. You trade it away for 100 discounts. A glance held a beat too long. A promise kept in spirit, but broken in tone. A joke with a barb that lands and sits and rots. For years you've trained your eyes to skim the surface and your mouth to say, "It's fine." Even while your body throws alarms you refuse to hear. You told yourself you'd recognize betrayal when it arrived with a neon sign, when it kicked the door down wearing someone else's perfume. You were wrong. It walks in as a whisper. It wears your routines like a mask. It eats with you and sleeps beside you and lights the room with tiny sparks that feel like nothing. Until those sparks find dry timber. By the end of this video, you will know exactly how to read micro-betrayals before they explode, how to distinguish fear from contempt, how to respond without turning your home into a courtroom, and how to either repair in time or walk with dignity before the house burns. You notice it first in your ribs. Not a pain, more like a narrowing. Morning light pools in the kitchen like warm tea. She taps her phone face down on the counter, screen light still bleeding from the edges, and says she didn't sleep well. You say, "Me neither." But your eyes drift to the phone the way a sailor watches the barometer drop. It's nothing, you tell yourself. It's a busy week. You make coffee, measure with a precision that would be endearing if it weren't also a way to control something, anything. She smiles while she's somewhere else. The smile reaches her teeth. It does not touch the muscles around her eyes. Your chest tightens. You don't accuse. You don't want to be that man, paranoid, policing, turning your home into a checkpoint. You hold it. You talk about meetings and deadlines, and the talk skates across the surface like a stone on a lake that refuses to sink. You feel fine-ish. Then the fine slides sideways. All that from a screen and a smile. You're being dramatic, you tell yourself, except you're not. Your body reads what your ego refuses to translate. Call it the hairline-crack principle. The cup doesn't shatter in your hand because it's weak today. It shatters because it's been webbing under the glaze for months. Lines too fine for your eyes, loud enough for your fingertips if you bothered to listen. Micro-betrayals are hairline cracks in the relational glaze. Subtle departures from the shared promise that "we" comes before the tiny power games people play when they're scared or bored or nursing a resentment they never named. You expect betrayal to look like a stranger in your bed. Sometimes it does. Most of the time, it looks like forgetting the ritual that keeps your nervous systems in sync. It looks like a compliment with a poison core. It looks like small secrecy sold as privacy. It looks like effort replaced by irony. It looks like "I'm joking" used as bubble wrap for contempt. You feel it like a draft through a door you thought was sealed. It's small. It's survivable. It's also the truth. And the truth is cumulative. You're at dinner with friends. Low light. The table is a tide of inside jokes and clinking glasses. She tells a story where you are the punchline, and it's mostly harmless. And the part that isn't lands like a thumb pressing into a bruise only the two of you can see. People laugh, you laugh. The laughter tastes metallic. Afterward, you say nothing because you don't want to be sensitive. Because it wasn't that bad. Because she was being charming, and you were being included, and this is what adults do, right? Except you go home and wash dishes harder than necessary. And when she asks what's wrong, you say, nothing. And nothing is a lie told so often it begins to feel like air. That moment? Micro-betrayal. Not because you're fragile, because a private vulnerability offered in trust just became public currency. The amount is small, the message is not. You are safest with me, once carved into stone, has a new footnote that reads, unless the laugh is worth it. You think you'll read these moments cleanly if you just memorize the signs. You won't. If you approach them like a detective hunting for evidence to weaponize. The detector you need is inside your torso. Does your breathing shrink? Do your eyes search the room like they just lost something? Do you feel an urge to either over-explain or go completely quiet? That's your nervous system telling you the field changed. Nothing catastrophic. A gust, not a hurricane. Good. Gusts let you adjust your sails without capsizing the boat. But only if you admit there's wind. Your first mistake is dismissing the small because it is small. The second is treating the small like a felony when you finally acknowledge it. You either swallow it whole or spit it like venom. Both are avoidances. One avoids conflict by paying interest in resentment. The other avoids intimacy by performing courtroom drama where mortgage should be. Micro-betrayals are not a license to accuse. They are an invitation to calibrate. You calibrate by naming the thing before it grows fangs. You say it clean. You say it early. You don't make it into a biography of her worst angles. You don't make it into a confession of your most tragic narratives. You make it into a boundary that respects both of you enough to be seen without makeup. Picture the bar where the story always shifts. Dark wood, brass rails, a bell above the door that sounds like nostalgia. You and her, shoulders close, the warmth of her knee against yours. The guy you both know walks in and lights the place up with a good mood. She lights up too. She leans to tell him something. You watch the lean. You don't police it. You watch your stomach drop half an inch, a tiny elevator descending to a floor you haven't visited in years. He makes her laugh. It's a good laugh. It's also the laugh you crave because it used to belong to you in a way that made your bones feel like home. She glances back at you for one beat longer than casual. There it is. Not disloyalty. A check. Is this okay? Are we okay? Your face is your answer. Do you flash a micro sneer? Do you pretend too hard that you don't care? Do you bark a joke that puts him in his place and makes her safety shrink? Or do you do the dangerous thing that keeps everybody honest? You stay present. You don't put your heart on trial for feeling, and you don't turn your feeling into a wrecking ball. Later, outside in the air that smells like rain, you say the simplest true thing, without salt or sugar. When you leaned in with him like that, something in me tightened. I'm not accusing, I'm naming. I want us to pay attention to that space. She can work with that. She cannot work with your accusations. She cannot work with your silence. Contrary to the romance you were sold, love is not a charm that locks behavior into virtue. Love is a contract with optional clauses. Micro-betrayals are how people renegotiate without saying they want to renegotiate. They push the line a centimeter and wait to see if the earth opens. If it doesn't, they push again. This is not always malicious. Sometimes it's self-protection. Sometimes it's anxiety seeking guaranteed oxygen. Sometimes it's boredom looking for a live wire. Your job is not to punish human fragility. Your job is to protect the home you're building from being slowly invaded by termites you both refuse to admit you see. That means you pull the conversation off the surface and into the space where patterns change. Start with your own mirror. You don't only read micro-betrayals, you also produce them. The delayed reply because you're nursing a petty bruise. The tiny eye roll you swear you didn't do that she felt like weather. The appointment you forget because part of you resents needing to show up in ways no one trained you to value. The teasing comment about her family you know lands like a small stone in a shoe. The quiet guilt that makes you martyr your boundaries for a week and then explode when your martyrdom fails to extract the praise it was fishing for. You want to be the prosecutor. Be the witness first. Catalog your own hairline cracks, not to shame yourself, but to prove you can wield this lens without turning it into a weapon you only point outward. Biology explains why this matters before your ideas do. Trust is a hormone pattern as much as a philosophy. Oxytocin builds like sediment when experiences of safe closeness repeat. Cortisol spikes when ambiguity enters the room with a knife behind its back. Dopamine sings when novelty arrives, whether the novelty is healthy or poison. Micro-betrayals tweak these dials in imperceptible ways that add up to altered weather systems. Read the weather. If your bodies were seasons, what's the forecast? If the last month tasted like smoke, you don't need a lecture on honesty. You need to find the ember. Maybe the ember is a joke that's become a tax. Maybe it's a ritual that died quietly. No more good morning kisses unless you both remember them with effort. Maybe it's privacy that turned into secrecy without a line being drawn. You don't throw the house away. You check the beams. You pull back the drywall. You press a finger into the soft wood and admit, this used to be solid, and now it's punky. That's not drama. That's maintenance. Maintenance means you notice and you name and you negotiate. You don't wait for the perfect moment, because perfect moments hide like shy animals. You create a container, a walk at dusk when the world goes quieter, a drive where eyes face the same direction and words can be honest without feeling like a duel. You say, I want to check our edges. You say, when you joked about me at dinner, I laughed. And part of me felt exposed in a way I don't want to feel with you. You don't add, and your mother was right about you. Because you're sane. You say, I need private criticism to stay private. Will you give me that? The answer matters less than the willingness to take the conversation seriously. If she fights the premise that edges exist and that edges deserve respect, you are not in a partnership. You are in a performance. Your choice is simple. Keep performing or end the show. This is where people love to hide behind, don't sweat the small stuff. That phrase is for traffic, not for trust. Sweat the small stuff precisely because it is small and cheap to address. The repair you do now costs an evening of unflinching attention and a small payment of ego. The repair you avoid now costs you a year of pretending, a few dead nights of sleeping back-to-back with volcanoes in your throats, and a heroic breakup where you both pretend to be shocked by the fire you watch together. You tell yourself you're above the small because you want to avoid one uncomfortable Sunday. Avoid it long enough and you get a decade you can't afford. Sometimes the micro-betrayal isn't about you at all. Sometimes it's an echo. She flinches when you raise your voice 2 decibels because decibels used to mean danger. She makes a joke at your expense because jokes were the only currency that bought her affection while she grew up. She keeps her phone face down not because she's hiding lovers, but because privacy is a wire she only learned to protect after people rummaged through her soul without permission. You don't erase these origins to absolve all behavior. You learn them to decide which hill you're actually standing on. Alarm doesn't equal accusation, Accusation without context equals sabotage. You meet in the middle where two humans admit they are not designed by goodwill alone. Biology and history pull strings. You can cut them if you see them. You can't cut what you pretend not to see. You worry that reading Micro-Betrayals turns you into a paranoid archivist with a wall of yarn. It will, if you chase confirmation. You aren't chasing confirmation. You're hunting for repair points. A repair point is a hinge where meaning changes course. It's, "I felt small during that story," followed by, "I get it. I won't trade your private for my public." That hinge swings the door back into alignment. If it doesn't swing, and you oil it, and you shim it, and it still grinds, the door is warped. No amount of sanding will turn warped into plumb. You don't keep yanking it and blaming the weather. You replace the door, or you learn to live with the draft. That's a choice, not a tragedy. Tragedy is pretending the door is fine while your house grows cold. Reading is half the job. Responding is the other. Response is not a speech, it's posture, it's face. It's the speed with which you move from panic to curiosity. When you see the small thing, you don't swing with a bat. You step closer the way a craftsman steps to a seam. Your tone drops, your shoulders soften, your attention sharpens. You favor nouns over adjectives. When you did X, I felt Y, and I need Z. Is a cliche because it works when you mean it. Don't dramatize the Y. Don't inflate the Z into a contract too heavy to hold. It's the smallness of the request that proves the smallness of the betrayal and makes the repair feel doable. What you're training is rhythm, not righteousness. Rhythm is what keeps nervous systems from slipping back into suspicion when life throws a real storm. Now hear the warning you don't want to hear. Some micro-betrayals are not cracks to be sealed. They're probes. They're control in a lab coat. Hot and cold attention designed to train your body to accept inconsistency as passion. Public flirtation disguised as, "I'm just friendly," and calibrated to keep you a notch below security. Canceling last minute just to watch if you grovel or hold frame. These are not typos. These are strategies. The test for strategy is repetition without repair. You raise it cleanly. You watch the behavior repeat with a new excuse, like a new sticker on an old box. That's when you stop negotiating with feelings and begin voting with your feet. Leaving is not rage. It's clarity. You exit not to teach a lesson, but to refuse a curriculum you never signed up to learn. You also refuse to become the manipulator in response. You don't retaliate with your own micro-betrayals to balance the scales. You don't flirt in front of her to make the point you're too afraid to say out loud. You don't hold affection hostage to punish slow growth. That's how boys nurse their pain into power. You're not a boy. You're a man aiming to make your presence a place where both of you can breathe. Men who can breathe don't train their lovers via anxiety. Men who cannot breathe train everyone. So you build the kind of day that makes you hard to move. Hard to move is not stubborn. It's resourced. Sleep that isn't a negotiation. Food that fuels. Work that matters enough to pull you forward when your heart wants to sit on the curb. Sweat that resets hormones when your brain wants to dig into a thought and never climb out. People whose eyes tell you when you're lying to yourself. The more gravity your life has, the less oxygen micro-betrayals find between your ribs. You still feel them. You don't orbit them. The difference between a crisis and a gust becomes obvious when your days have weight. You try this. Weeks pass. You speak earlier. You notice more gently. You repair faster. Something changes. The small snipes diminish. The phones flip face up. The jokes hit with warmth, not heat. The rituals return. not as performances, but as rhythms you both choose because they make morning smoother. Not perfect. Human. On a Tuesday that used to be forgettable, she catches herself mid-story before reaching for the cheap laugh that hurts and replaces it with a kindness that glows. She glances at you, not for permission, but for the private smile that says, "We're doing it." The opposite of explosion isn't silence. It's a low, steady fire that cooks a life worth eating. You also prepare for the alternate truth. You do all this, and it still fractures. Because she doesn't want what you want. Because you both grew in directions that don't fit the same room. Because the tiny disrespect wasn't a message. It was a symptom of an exit already underway. You don't need a villain for a clean ending. You need honesty that comes before the explode. You sit at the table. You say, "We keep editing each other. I keep naming small hurts, and they don't change. And you keep asking me to become less so you can feel more. And we're not bad. We're just mismatched." You don't campaign for pity. You don't roll out an indictment. You toast what was good. You tell the truth about what wasn't. You walk before the house burns, so the neighborhood doesn't have to watch you both pretend you're surprised by smoke. Somewhere, years from now, you run into her on a street where autumn makes every step sound like paper. You share a few sentences that don't ache the way you feared. You know why. Because you learned to read quiet disrespect in time to refuse becoming unrecognizable to yourself. Because you practiced repairing when repair was still inexpensive. Because you left when the price outgrew the reward. That skill leaves with you. It doesn't stay with her. It becomes part of how you walk, how you hire, how you lead, how you parent, how you say no, how you kiss, how you hold a friend when he tells you everything is fine and his hands won't stop shaking. The myth you dismantle is that betrayal is large. It is at the end. Before the end, it is little. It lives in tone, in delays, in chores done like punishment, in words like always and never brandished like badges, in logistics wielded as revenge. In the subtle way she stops asking how your day went and you stop answering with more than autopilot. This isn't about paranoid accounting. It's about sacred noticing. Sacred because the small matters, because the daily is holy, because most people destroy their great loves, not through grand cruelty, but through tiny, repeated proofs that they cannot be trusted with the delicate. You want to be different? Become careful in the way a surgeon is careful, in the way a craftsman sands what no one will see because he knows he will know. Quiet care is erotic when it's real. It grows desire without wreckage. It builds a reputation at home that no outsider can outbid. You return to the kitchen where this began. Morning again, coffee again, the phone again. Only now, when she taps it face down, you don't swallow the truth. You've both agreed that privacy and secrecy are different countries with a clear border. She says, "My sister." And you don't need the proof. The proof is in the months you've earned by catching splinters before they became arrows. Or she says nothing, and your ribs narrow like before, and you say, "Something in me tightened when you flipped it," and she meets you or she doesn't. Either way, you're not a hostage to the hope that pretending will save you. You're not the kind of man who waits for flames to call the fire department. You're the kind who keeps a hand on the pipes and feels the water move, who hears the wall hum and knows which beam to tap, who loves out loud while it's small and leaves out loud when small refuses to become honest. You don't prevent every explosion. You prevent being surprised by the ones you ignited with your own denial. That's as much control as a human gets. It's plenty. It's enough to build something durable with a person who wants to learn the same song. It's enough to stop kneeling in front of red flags and calling it devotion. It's enough to change the way your children learn to love, because they learn to watch before they learn to speak. And they'll watch you set a table where dignity eats every day, not just on holidays. The raw truth is simple and sharp. Breakups are rehearsed in whispers long before they debut on stage. Hear the whispers, answer them, or refuse them. But don't pretend you didn't hear the cue when the curtain falls.